The souls of the just are in the hand of God, and no torment shall touch them. They are in peace. Lord, now let your servant go in peace. Peace. You know, it's been 5.5 months since Dad died. 5.5 months that we've all had to think about him, to appreciate him, to learn from his life, and to learn from his entrance into eternal life. And today, 5.5 months later, we are finally able to lay Daniel Redmond to rest so that he may rest in peace. Peace. And in this time, thinking of my dad, I keep coming to this idea, to this word, to this notion of peace. You know, it's funny because my dad, as many of you know, was a man who was very opinionated. And if you got him on a bad day, well, you could forget about peace. Just ask my brothers, who I barely remember this, but they used to race to put on like 10 pairs of underwear whenever my dad got out the belt, just so that their rear ends could know a little bit of peace. Just ask anybody who got in an argument with my dad. It wasn't very peaceful. And he was an ER doctor at one of the craziest, most unpeaceful hospitals in Dallas. And then he joined the Army. So what's this about peace? And yet, in thinking about it all, I think it was peace that he was seeking all along. He went from that ER doc to joining the Army and doing sleep research. Sleep research in the Army. He was literally studying peace. Those few hours of peace that we get every day. Measuring it. Trying to understand it. It's why I think he had maybe what we thought was one of the craziest sleep habits you ever saw for a sleep doctor. He woke up at like 4 a.m. every morning and drank coffee and read his newspaper. I think that's when he was able to find peace. And I think that's what the Boy Scouts were all about. For him, it was, he was a people person, but he yearned for those peaceful days up in the Grand Tetons, or at Yellowstone, or on Lake Temagami, or at Little Bennett Regional Park. And my dad knew, and Matt, I think you might know this and understand this better than anyone. My dad knew that food, making amazing meals where family and friends could come together, that food was an instrument of peace. Now, it could also be an instrument of war, especially Matt, when you hog all the sourdough pancakes. But my dad knew that food, really good food, and wine brought peace. And I think that early on, my dad found peace in the church. I remember as a kid, he'd go to 6:30 a.m. Mass at St. John's every morning during Lent. It was this moment, quiet time in the morning, where he encountered Jesus during Mass. Mass was a moment of peace. And especially after my mom died, it was how he found his peace. And this church particularly, this historic church, brought him peace. He spent months working on cataloging all these beautiful stained glass windows, writing up a beautiful guide for them. And he did it for us. But I think he spent all that time in here for peace as well. And that's what he sought at the end. at the end of his days, he sought peace. I remember Bonnie was there. He kept saying at the hospital, 3 things, 3 things. Dad, what are those 3 things? 3 things, 3 things. My dad wanted to do 3 final things that spring from that hospital bed. He wanted to see the 125th anniversary of this building, Old St. John's. He wanted to see my ordination, and he wanted to be at my first Mass that I was going to have here at Old St. John's. And my dad was here for that first Mass, sitting right over there where he always sat. And I gave him the purple stole that today he will be buried with. Somehow, through technology, through people making it happen, my dad was able to be part of all 3 of those things. And notice, all 3 of those had to do with Jesus. They were events that brought our family together, friends together, that involved food, even if he couldn't eat it. Yet they were all aimed at something greater. They were aimed to Jesus Christ, who my dad knew was the source of all peace. Jesus Christ is the source of our peace. He is the source of peace in the world. He's the source of peace amongst nations. Within our nation, He is the source of peace in our families. And He's the source of whatever peace we might find in ourselves. And Dad knew that. Dad knew that. On his deathbed, and long before, he and I talked about it. Dad found Christ, and he found peace. In that moment when he died, and I was driving up here, and I was praying finished that rosary. I didn't know he was dead. I finished that rosary, and I had this sense of peace. And then Sean calls and says, Dad just died. That's the peace. And in the months since then, the peace has been in our family. Even when we all gather, when Redmond kids gather, it's usually like a little mini war. I don't know why. But we'd like to butt heads and argue and that sort of stuff. We love each other, but we like to butt heads. And on Thanksgiving, it was like that. We butted heads. It was tough. It was a terrible, way to spend Thanksgiving in some ways, especially without our dad. But then the greatest miracle of all happened. On Black Friday, the day when the world's going crazy, shopping, doing all that crazy stuff, Matt made matzo ball soup with turkey, and we all spent the whole day together, and we didn't get in a single argument, and we were dividing things, going through the house, and we were up to 1 a.m, laughing, having a good time. Now that is a miracle. And I'm pretty sure my dad, who had found peace, wanted us to experience a taste of that peace. Today, Christ is still with us, even as Daniel Redmond is laid to rest. And as Daniel Redmond can't be with us as he was before. But as long as we come here, as long as we come to encounter Christ, we too can enjoy that peace, that same peace that Dad now enjoys. Lord, now let your servant go in peace. Your word has been fulfilled.